Reuters has reported that Russia may seize U.S. diplomatic property in Moscow and complicate life for an Anglo-American school unless Washington hands back 2 diplomatic compounds in the United States before July. In December, then U.S. President Barack Obama ordered the expulsion of 35 Russians over what he said was their involvement in hacking last year's U.S. presidential election, allegations Moscow flatly denies. At the same time, the U.S. authorities seized 2 Russian diplomatic compounds, one in Maryland and another on Long Island. Kommersant, citing unnamed diplomatic sources, said on Friday that Moscow wanted the compounds back before a possible meeting at the G20 in Germany in July between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Trump. If that did not happen, the newspaper cited the sources as saying Russia could retaliate by seizing a U.S. diplomatic dacha, or country house, in northwest Moscow, and a U.S. diplomatic warehouse in Moscow.
The Islamic State said it killed 2 Chinese teachers who the militant group had been holding hostage for more than 2 weeks. The group's Amaq news agency announced the reported deaths on Thursday, June 8th. The Chinese nationals had been abducted in southwest Pakistan in May. China's foreign ministry said Friday that it is still trying to verify the information, but that Pakistan had said the 2 hostages are most likely dead. The pair were reportedly studying Urdu and teaching Chinese when they were kidnapped by armed men in Balochistan's provincial capital, Quetta. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said China had been working with Pakistan to try and rescue them. The killings come at a time when China is heavily invested in Pakistan. China has poured billions of dollars into the country, building infrastructure projects as part of its One Belt, One Road initiative.
Australian counter-terrorism police conducted pre-dawn raids in the southern city of Melbourne after a deadly siege that was claimed by the Islamic State group. The Australian Security and Intelligence Organization joined police in carrying out search warrants on 3 addresses linked to the attack, where they questioned 3 men they said were suspected of providing weapons used in the attack. Police shot dead gunman Yaqub Khayer after he killed a man in an apartment block in a Melbourne suburb and held a woman hostage for several hours. 3 police officers were wounded in a shootout at the end of the siege, but the woman was unhurt. Australia has been a staunch U.S. ally and has been on heightened alert for attacks by homegrown militants returning from fighting in the Middle East. The siege has also sparked debates about immigration and parole laws since the gunman, Khayer, was granted parole in November after being convicted of a violent home invasion and was acquitted of a plot to attack a Sydney Army base in 2009.
United States prosecutors have arrested and charged 2 men with scouting potential targets and providing material support to the Lebanese group Hezbollah. The group has been designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. government. In a criminal complaint unsealed Thursday, prosecutors said one of the accused attended Hezbollah-sponsored weapons training in Lebanon as a teenager in 2000, before lawfully coming to America in 2003. Lawyers for both of the men could not immediately be reached for comment.
Police not ruling out terror after a speeding truck plows into 2 police officers. The terrifying scene unfolding in D.C. overnight. Police say a white pickup truck mowed down a city worker and 2 cops on bicycles before smashing into an empty garbage truck. One of the officers fighting for their life at this hour. Now both the driver and the passenger are behind bars. Police finding a weapon in the pickup truck.
New data from the Border Patrol shows there hasn't been an increase in illegal immigration during the spring months, which breaks historical trends.
Any foot sign on the other side?
There's been a significant decrease in illegal immigration in 2017, and that's continued from February through May, when there's normally an increase.
What we've seen as of lately is a decrease in illicit cross-border traffic.
Chief Self says strong messaging from President Trump creates what he calls a mindset of deterrence.
The wall will be a great help, and that'll happen, believe me.
The chief also says additional funding, a stronger effort to capture and prosecute traffickers, ending catch and release, and new technology and infrastructure also helps. Last year at this time, this was just a chain link fence, but at the end of the summer 2016, they installed it with this new replacement baller-type fencing, which has large steel beams. There are 2 main types of fencing along the southern border, this baller-type fencing and also this pedestrian-type fencing with a vehicle barrier on the bottom, which can stop an SUV going 55 miles an hour.
It makes them think twice about taking their life savings, giving it to a smuggler, getting on that dangerous track just to get apprehended and returned to your country of origin.
The chief still expects to see the numbers rise during the summer, but not to the levels of recent years.
We're getting reaction tonight to North Korea's latest missile tests. They came on the same day South Korea's new president suspended installation of new U.S.-provided anti-missile defenses. Correspondent Kirsten Fisher is watching all of it tonight from the Pentagon.
When North Korea launched several surface-to-ship missiles about 24 hours ago, they landed in the same waters where, earlier this week, 2 U.S. aircraft carriers were conducting joint military exercises with the South Korean Navy. South Korean military leaders are saying the North likely wanted to show off its ability to precisely hit a large warship, while the country's new president is issuing this warning to his northern counterpart.
Our government, as I have already clarified multiple times, will not back off at all or compromise regarding national security and people's safety.
This latest launch was the 4th missile test by North Korea since South Korean President Moon Jae took office less than a month ago. He's been outspoken about his willingness to achieve denuclearization through both dialogue and diplomacy. He also pulled the plug on the full deployment of a crucial U.S. missile defense system just hours before this latest missile test took place. Today, the State Department spokeswoman said Pyongyang's most recent provocations prove why the Trump administration believes the THAAD missile defense system is so vital.
Something along the lines of THAAD is something that's important to not only protect U.S. forces, to protect our alliance, and also to protect, help to further strengthen the region.
The move to suspend the deployment of THAAD, which had only become operational last month, is now being applauded by China and criticized on Capitol Hill.
It's obviously a blow to our national security interests, but larger than that, I think what it means is South Korea is not sure of the United States' commitment to their collective security.
North Korea has slammed President Donald Trump for pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, calling it a, quote, short-sighted and silly decision. In a statement published June 6th on North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency and attributed to an unidentified foreign ministry spokesperson, Pyongyang said the move represented, quote, the height of egoism and moral vacuum, seeking only their own well-being, even at the cost of the entire planet.
When President Trump decided to not move forward with the Paris Agreement as it is, everyone went nuts, saying the U.S. is the worst. We're the worst polluters, and now our president doesn't even care about the environment. And that we should all be like Europe, because they care so much about the environment, and they're so much more righteous than we Americans. Which is why I found a recent report from the World Health Organization so interesting, because it reveals that the U.S. is actually one of the countries with the cleanest air in the world. And not only that, but it has cleaner air than many European countries, including Germany, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, and, yep, even the above reproach France. Mon Dieu, can you believe it? The only G7 country with cleaner air than the U.S., in fact, was Canada, which has about 1/10 of the population of the U.S., 1/10.
Britain woke up this morning to a political earthquake. Newspaper headlines capture how Prime Minister Theresa May's gamble on early elections backfired. Her Conservative Party lost its overall majority, but she vows to stay in power. The Prime Minister is headed to Buckingham Palace to ask the Queen for permission to form a new government.
Theresa May early this morning looked shaken, chastened, and beaten. Odd for somebody whose party had won more seats than any other, but that's the way it works here. She had lost her majority in Parliament.
More than anything else, this country needs a period of stability, and whatever the results are.
The results for her were disastrous. She had called the snap election while riding a double-digit opinion poll lead.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election.
She built her campaign around her leadership, which she called over and over again,
strong and stable, strong and stable, strong and stable leadership.
But she looked, her opponent said, weak and wobbly, refusing to do TV debates, flip-flopping on policy. And Jeremy Corbyn, her main opponent, turned out not to be as bad a campaigner as many thought. He ran on an old-style tax and spend platform, appealed to the youth vote. A kind of British Bernie Sanders.
Want to be near where Corbyn is, near where the action is.
Hi guys, thank you very much. Corbyn still finished second, but for him, not being obliterated, even making gains, smelled like victory.
The mandate she's got is lost Conservative seats, lost votes, lost support and lost confidence. I would have thought that's enough to go.
But apparently she will not go. What happens now? Frankly, it's a bit of a mess. Theresa May says she will try to cling on to power with the support of one of the smaller parties from Northern Ireland. How long can that last? The betting here, Gail, is that we may all be back here doing this all over again in not too long a time.
Election in a row. The Democratic Unionists of Northern Ireland have hit the political jackpot despite only winning 2 extra seats. But like away goals, they count double in this high-stakes election. Their 10 seats in all may mean Theresa May retains power.
Well, we will always do, as we always say, what's right in the best interest of the people of Northern Ireland. That's always been our strapline. It's always been the reality. It was in the last Parliament, as you know, between 2015 and just in April past. That was always what we looked for, what was best for Northern Ireland, and that's what we'll be looking for again.
The DUP is fiercely Brexit, whereas the rest of the country voted to remain in the European Union.
Jailed mafia boss Giuseppe Graviano has described ex-Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi as a traitor in a bugged conversation with a fellow inmate. A transcription of the recording has been included in evidence for a trial into alleged negotiations between the state and the mafia in the early 1990s. Graviano said, when he found himself with a party like that in 1994, he got drunk and said, "I cannot share what I have with those who helped me. Did I explain?" He distanced himself and became a traitor. Graviano was taped as he talked to a cellmate during an hour in the open air in jail. He also said bombings that killed 20 at art and religious sites in Rome and Milan in the spring and summer of 1993 were not the work of the Sicilian mafia. He went on, "Because you know that I'll be here for 24 years. He gives money to the prostitutes every month. I've been waiting for you till now. I'm getting older, and you leave me here dying in jail."
On Friday, the conflict between Qatar and a group of Arab nations led by Saudi Arabia and Egypt intensified, creating a major diplomatic test for the United States, which is allied to countries on both sides. Arab states, which had already cut diplomatic and transport ties with Qatar, tightened their grip by placing dozens of individuals linked to Qatar on terrorism blacklists. In response, Turkey, an ally of Qatar, announced its support with plans to send troops, warships, and planes. Riyadh, Cairo, and their allies accuse Qatar, the world's wealthiest country per capita, of supporting militant Islamist movements throughout the region. They have imposed what Qatar claims is a blockade of shipping and air traffic, while also closing off Qatar's only land border. German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel has called for urgent diplomatic efforts to resolve the worst crisis to grip the region in years.
Obviously we saw what was going on, but like Gaza said, really just trying to concentrate in that minute to show our respect.
On Sunday, Puerto Ricans will cast their votes on whether or not the struggling island should become the 51st U.S. state. The vote comes at a critical time for an island whose hazy political status has fueled an economic crisis that has pushed it into the biggest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. The vote offers 3 options for the future of Puerto Rico: either to become a U.S. state, to remain a territory, or to become an independent nation. The country is currently facing a crippling $70 billion debt and a 45% poverty rate, as well as woefully underperforming schools and near-insolvent pension and health systems. Currently, its 3.5 million American citizens do not pay federal taxes, vote for U.S. presidents, or receive federal funding on programs like Medicaid.
Catalonia's independence referendum finally has a date. On October 1st, 2017, voters will decide once and for all if the region should leave Spain and become an independent republic. Catalonia's attempt to break away dates back to the early 1900s. The then ruler declared the Catalan Republic in 1931, but quickly withdrew it in an exchange for autonomy. It's been a long road since then. Madrid and the Catalan region have been at each other's throats for decades, battling over Catalonia's independence. There are a few reasons Catalonia wants to leave, but a lot of it comes down to money. It's one of the wealthiest regions in Spain, and some argue Madrid taxes it unfairly because of that. But the Spanish government isn't going to let the referendum happen without a fight. Madrid still has constitutional power to interfere with Catalonia's government and suspend its power. Catalonian leadership actually tried to stage a referendum in 2014, but the Spanish government said it was illegal. Still, the region held a symbolic vote. 4 in 5 voters supported sovereignty.
Archaeologists in Mexico uncovered a massive temple and ball court where Aztecs may have played a deadly game that ended in human sacrifice. They revealed their discovery to reporters June 7th after excavating in downtown Mexico City where a hotel used to stand. The old hotel was destroyed in 1985 when an earthquake shook the capital. The owners later discovered the ancient ruins and notified the National Institute of Anthropology and History. Archaeologists said the dig revealed a circular temple dedicated to the Aztec god of wind, as well as a nearby ritual ball court. They suggest the temple was built between 1486 and 1502. Near the ball court, the archaeologists uncovered 32 sets of neck bones from young adults and maybe some children. The remains hint that players were possibly decapitated after playing the ball game. According to The Guardian, once the dig is finished, a museum will be established on the site.
In a highly anticipated series of interviews, influential Hollywood director Oliver Stone has gone head-to-head with Vladimir Putin. Now, according to Stone, it's meant to give a glimpse into the workings of the president's mind. RT's Murad Gaziev has been taking a closer look at the Putin interviews. He's here now. Murad, what else can we expect from this? Let's face it, pretty unique access to President Putin.
It is, isn't it? And, well, the full documentary is coming out on the 12th of June. Oliver Stone spent 2 years putting this documentary together, you know, taking any opportunity to record another little snippet with Vladimir Putin. But to tide us over until the release, we've been getting little teasers. And this latest one is about Vladimir Putin's opinion on one of his most vocal critics, Senator John McCain.
На самом деле он для меня даже немножко симпатичен. Да, я не шучу сейчас. Он симпатичен мне своим патриотизмом и своей последовательностью в защите интересов своей страны. Люди, значит, с такими убеждениями, как сенатор, которого вы упомянули, они живут еще в старом мире и не хотят взглянуть в будущее, не хотят понять, как быстро меняется мир.
On the other hand, John McCain is 80 years old, so you could understand perhaps why he might not like change. But, you know, considering how often John McCain himself talks about Vladimir Putin, I think there may yet be some feelings in that cold, old heart of his. But let's leave their relationship to the two of them. Also mentioned was NATO, and about how Russia seriously considered joining the military alliance a decade ago.
Я помню одну из наших последних встреч с президентом Клинтоном, когда еще Клинтон был президентом. Он приезжал в Москву. Да, я в ходе дискуссии сказал, может быть, посмотреть такой вариант, что Россия, может быть, вступит в НАТО. Клинтон только ответил, что ж, я не против, но вся делегация американская очень занервничала. Вы можете попробовать подать заявку в НАТО?
You could understand why the United States might be a little bit giddy about Russia joining NATO. NATO is an alliance that is ruled by America. The United States says all the NATO members obey, and it probably wouldn't do to have Russia in the midst of it, you know, challenging the United States for leadership. But, you know, it's another frank look into the inner workings of international diplomacy and what happens behind the scenes, which is why documentaries like this are so loved, are so liked, because they offer us a frank, well, as frank as we're going to get, look into these people that you really see only on television. And, you know, any chance to get a little closer to Vladimir Putin, the person, not the president, is welcome.
Now for that ABC News exclusive with Chelsea Manning. She's the transgender former Army soldier who spent years in prison for leaking classified military records to WikiLeaks back in 2010. She sat down with Nightline's Juju Chang for her first interview since being released. Juju is here. Good morning, Juju.
Good morning, George. You know, for the past 7 years, only a handful of visitors have been allowed to see Chelsea Manning or hear her voice. And yet she's become a beacon for anti-secrecy rights and transgender rights, a hero to many. But critics say she betrayed her country plain and simple. She would argue, in the fog of war, it's much more complicated than that. So many people call you a traitor. Many call you a hero.
Right.
Who is Chelsea Manning?
So, I'm just me. It's as simple as that.
Yet the story she's sharing this morning for the first time is far more complex. The world first heard about her as Bradley Manning in 2010, when the Army intelligence analyst was charged with leaking the largest trove of government secrets in U.S. history.
Do you feel as though you owe the American public an apology?
I've accepted responsibility. No one told me to do this. Nobody directed me to do this. This is me. It's on me.
It was images like this that Manning says compelled her to go to WikiLeaks. American soldiers carrying out an aerial attack on what ended up being unarmed civilians, including children. Among the dead, 2 Reuters journalists.
You're getting all this information, and it's just death, destruction, mayhem, and eventually you just stop. I stopped seeing just statistics and information, and I started seeing people. Counterinsurgency warfare is not a simple thing. It's not as simple as like good guys versus bad guys. It is a mess.
She leaked over 700,000 documents in total, saying she wanted to spark public debate.
So you didn't think any of it was going to threaten national security?
No.
There are those who say you may have been motivated to get the information into the public sphere, but you might have also given it to our enemies.
Right, but I have a responsibility to the public. You know, it's not just about, we all have a responsibility.
Manning was acquitted of the most serious charge of aiding the enemy, but pled guilty to others and was sentenced to the longest prison term for any American leaker, 35 years. Within days, she made another life-changing decision.
What made you decide to come out as trans after being sentenced?
I had to be who I am.
But the military denied her request for hormones. Fighting for her right to transition, so daunting, she says, she tried to commit suicide twice, which led to time in solitary confinement.
And why was it so important to you to fight for hormone treatments while you were behind bars?
It's literally what keeps me alive. It keeps me from feeling like I'm in the wrong body. Like I get these horrible I used to get these horrible feelings like I just want to rip my body apart.
The Army ultimately granted her request, and then 5 months ago, after 7 years in prison, a gift from a parting president, clemency.
I feel very comfortable that justice has been served.
You haven't spoken to President Obama. What would you say to him if you could?
Thank you. Give it a chance. That's all I wanted.
You wanted a chance.
That's all I asked for was a chance. That's it. And this is my chance.